and we are live. Great. So, hello everyone, Faiza Yusuf here again. This is my second appearance today. So, we have Nadia with us today again because today is our second episode in the communication webinar series. And Nadia is going to be talking about equity, respect, and empathy in the workplace. So, over to you, Nadia, and I'll be collecting questions and making sure that you get them once you're done with your content. Great.
Hello, everybody. How are you all? So this is the second of the 3 webinars that I'm going to be doing for women in tech and a lot of other tech communities. And I am honored to be here. Thank you so much, Faiza. Thank you so much, Shamim, Yamna, for giving me this opportunity because I have had a lot of training and I've had done a lot of research around diversity and inclusion. And again, we come across so many different ways in which people face all of these situations in the workplace and then what to do about those. So we'll talk a little bit about those and then we'll see, we'll look at some strategies and some tools that you can use as an individual if you come across discrimination or disrespectful behavior in the workplace, or if you are somebody who has witnessed somebody else be in that situation where they are suffering from discrimination in the workplace as well. So thank you so much, Faiza, again. I would just like to begin over here and say that in order for employees to cope with a toxic workplace, they say that 50% of workplaces have reported that harassment victims suffer from mental health issues, okay, and mental health problems or mental health related problems. And then the other one is that in order to cope with a toxic workplace, employees will take twice as much sick time. So if you are a company, look at the cost and the revenue that's going in when employees are taking time off, just because they need that time to regroup and come back to the workplace stronger because of a lack of respect, because of discrimination, bullying, and harassment in the workplace. And I'm going to quote a North American Canadian statistic that nearly half of Canadians have reported that they have experienced one or more workplace-related harassment or discrimination issue once a week for the last 6 months. So look at how the rates are so high in a place like Canada. And 3 in 10 Canadians report that they are not psychologically safe and healthy at work. So a lot of companies do spend a lot of time on safety training at work or the physical hazards at work. We also have to be careful about the psychosocial hazards at work as well. So when we talk about the workplace, a lot of times when we talk about the workplace, that's our second home in a lot of ways, right? And that's the place where we spend a lot of time. And when we talk about the workplace, creating this equitable, respectful and empathetic behavior towards our colleagues is very important. So when we talk about equity and equality, there is right now, a lot of us are fighting for equality. And here I am talking about equity, right? But I think it's time for us to start thinking about equity as well. And that means equity is simply fairness or justice in the way people are treated. Now, if you read up a lot of articles by Stanford and a lot of the international articles, a lot of companies have their own, or they use their own lens to lend a definition or kind of, have the definition of equity in their own way. So some things that a lot of people do kind of agree on is that equity is different from diversity, inclusion, and equality. Diversity is, as in the last one we noted, it's the acknowledging that there are diverse groups based on where they're from, who they love, and their race, religion, all of those things. Inclusion is including all of those people in the workplace. Equality is giving them equal opportunities, and equity is giving each person what they need to survive. So that means that obviously, as a fresh graduate, so when you're going in, there are going to be people who are going to be more experienced than you. So is your company giving you that training that you need in order for you to be successful? So it could be something as simple. It's not as simple. A lot of places do not have this as the onboarding, training. Yes, you will have the employee orientation, but that's very different from the onboarding experience that you have, right? So does your company have that? Or if you are a manager, does your company have an onboarding training for new employees? How does it look like? What is it worth? It's worthwhile investing in all of these trainings, in all of these practices, to save up on that revenue that employees are going to take up all of the sick leaves just because the workplace is toxic, just because they face discrimination in the workplace as well. So, I mean, just this is a very the image of equality versus equity is giving you the tools or providing you with the means to be successful. So that is what is equity. And equality. Before also I said, we use the shoe analogy, that you give everybody the same shoe size. In the workplace also, that fits in. And equity would be giving you the specific shoe that fits you and is comfortable for you. So in the workplace, how does that look like? So, like, we'll look at that, and also we will look at what does respect in the workplace look like. We all have very different views and worldviews, and they're very different ideas about what respect in the workplace looks like, right? So, respect in the workplace simply means that you have created an environment, or there is a workplace where employees can perform with personal and professional dignity. So, when you talk about dignity, that means that nobody has to feel small, nobody has to feel little while they're working at that job or in that workplace, right? And they're just being very quiet about it. I think if this were a live audience, I'd have a show of hand where I could ask people, was there a time when you in your career where you felt that you could not perform with your personal dignity? Yes, there were times. Were there any times when you could not perform with your professional dignity? Yes, there were times. And but we say this, we've all experienced it, but then somehow many of us are the ones who become the tools that this kind of, it could be conscious, it could be unconscious, this kind of behavior is seen in the workplace. A respectful workplace is a place which embraces diversity. Very important to have different perspectives. We talked about it last time as well. This workplace practices inclusion. So when we talk about diversity, when we talk about different groups, then you are including those groups. You are not just shutting down their experiences, but you are including them in decision making, in the work that is there. And then a respectful workplace is one that values employees for their role and their contribution. That means that you're not being dismissed as, oh, this newbie, or you're not being dismissed by somebody who doesn't have enough experience, or you're somebody who doesn't, who you're not being dismissed because you do things differently. And then the mindset of the company is that we've always done it this way. So we need to change these mindsets. Companies need to change this mindset. Yes, as an employee, it is your job to be very knowledgeable about the vision, mission, and the values of your organization. And then look at, so that is the first thing that you actually need to do before you even apply to a company. Do the values and the mission and the vision of that particular company align with your personal values, right? So is it just that you're going just because it's a name, it's a big name, and they offer good salary? Yes, that's fine, but then what about the toxic workplace culture that you will find over there? So sometimes, I mean, I have always given preference to the values and the mission and the vision of a workplace. And my friends call me a couple of times they've called me crazy, because I have even joined institutions at half the salary just because their vision and their mission aligned with my values, and that's what I liked. And I did not go after salary, I did not go after the pay package, the name, but it was mostly the that I really like the work culture or the environment. It's very important for all of us to have that comfortable environment to thrive. We will not be able to thrive if it's a toxic environment that you have. So a respectful workplace is some place that tackles bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination. And the management takes those steps. And you, as employees, also know what the policies are, what the procedures are to tackle bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination, and all kinds of behavior that's there. So, who is responsible? Is it just the management's job? Well, not really. It's a shared responsibility. We are all responsible in creating a respectful workplace. The management has a bigger and a larger role to play, yes, because they're the policymakers, right? Your managers and supervisors have increased responsibility. And if you are a manager or a supervisor, your responsibility increases because you need to be careful about the company policies, how the employees feel, how your team members feel, and how do you address all of this. Are you just sweeping things under the rug? Do you have an ostrich approach to harassment or discrimination in the workplace? It could be so. So a lot of companies do that climate in the workplace survey, and then it could be about workload. It could be about timings. It could be about who's given which projects. There's so many different things that you can talk about, that we can talk about, that show us that if people are getting what they signed up for or not. So human resources very important. So the human resources personnel, if your company has a department, if you do not have a department, then maybe you need to have a person, you need to have a policy. So I think the first and foremost, and I've been to I worked at many institutions and worked and been affiliated with some companies, and a lot of times I noticed that I think at least for two of these institutions, while I was there, that's when they were forming their respectful workplace policies, right? They kind of existed. There are those codes of conduct. So those were being treated as that. But you need to have this definite policy that all employees are aware of. They know the procedure, what to do. A lot of times, what happens is that when you go into a company, you don't know because you're so busy tackling your, like, whatever the immediate challenge is, the project that you've been given, the deliverables that you have to, or the deadlines that you have to meet. So you're so busy with all of those things that these things kind of are put on the side. They're in that pending list and then that pending box that you have on the side. And then yes, maybe some companies, they will have all of these as onboarding practices. They will have this checklist of diversity training and other things, respect. So you just kind of go on and check those boxes. That's good, but how can you be better? How can you be better? Are you also walking the walk and not just talking the talk? So that's something that you really need to look at, and you really need to see. So when we talk about shared responsibility, then as employees, what is the first thing that we can do? So the first thing that we can do is we can reflect, right? So we can reflect on what? So we can reflect on by examining our unconscious bias. So bias is, we all have ideas in mind about, or assumptions, and then unconscious bias is that you don't even really mean it, but it comes across. It's the way you may talk to somebody. It's the way you may give comments about somebody else. It could be anything. It could be like, I don't want to give work to this person. She said she has kids and I don't want her to mess up, right? Now, what has that got to do with the work that this person's doing, right? So their family life is probably outside. Yeah, maybe, when we say that you have that empathetic mindset, create equitable solutions. In that sense, yes, you need to be mindful of what the person's responsibilities are outside. So give them that extra time. If they're competent enough, you should not take away that project from them just because they have extra responsibilities or they will need extra time. If you are able to provide them with that extra time or with those extra resources, and they're able to do their job, then you should just not just think about it. So think about your unconscious bias. Examine how you speak and behave at the workplace. So this is a very important point. Do you frequently dominate a conversation? Um, how do you sound when you interact with other people? Do you sound pushy? Do you sound that as if you have an overbearing personality? So these are all reflection questions that you need to ask yourself. And then as a listener, do you find yourself reacting negatively to something that somebody else has said, or even harshly when something tells you that they don't like something or they don't want to hear something? So at team meetings, a lot of times it's a lot of company meetings, it might be, my way or the highway, right? So are you a person who prefers my way, or are you somebody who prefers our way, which is, mutual consent and then moving on a project like that? Then how do you react as a listener when somebody else is dominating and overbearing? Do you get angry suddenly, or do you just become quiet? So yesterday I did a fireside chat with PWIC, and we talked about amygdala hijack, right? We talked about that when we are tense situations, how does our mind react to those? So in some cases, we'd have that fight or flight mode. So in some cases, we will also get angry just because the other person is getting angry. So we mirror the action, and in other cases, we'll just be very quiet. We'll just go away. So just, I think, being mindful of all of these things, of how you react, those things are very important. Then after you've examined yourself, you need to examine how others speak and behave at the workplace as well, and listen to other people and how they react, both positively and negatively. So, and then these are behaviors that is, as if you're a new person, you're going to pick, and just kind of pick those behaviors. So if it's a negative behavior, maybe that's after a time you may think it's okay, but really it's not. Pick up the positive behaviors, look at the positive behaviors that people have, and also focus on how people use positive or negative emotions in their everyday lives. Is there a lot of criticism? Is there a lot of critique of the organization? And sometimes there is a lot, right? But having said that, what are the positivities of that particular place that people are talking about as well? And then also observe the interactions of others when they meet each other, positively and negatively as well. So these things will help you understand the company culture or the workplace culture that you have over there. And then once you're done with all of these things, as an individual yourself, focus on the positive behavior, focus on the positive interactions, focus on the positive comments, all right, within that company, and then be the first one to shun away from the negativities, the criticism, the rumors, the discrimination, and everything like that. So how do you deal with, so maybe you've come across some negative behavior. So when we talk about negative behavior, there could be bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination, and these things do not have to be at the physical level. These can also be and are, so mostly, as I gave you this the stats before, it's basically the ones that we don't see, that psychologically impact us, that really affect our performance. So when we talk about these particular points, I just want you to think about a time when you faced any of these: bullying, abuse, harassment, or discrimination at the workplace. So think about a time when you had that. And I also want you to think about how you reacted to that situation. What did you do in that situation? Were you quiet? Did you speak up? Did you let it go? And if you have never been in this situation, you're very lucky. How did you respond if you saw this behavior in happening to somebody else, maybe a coworker, a colleague? What was your response? Did you have the approach that, okay, it didn't happen with me, thank God it wasn't me? Is that the approach? What's the approach like? And then I think you need to also understand that, is it a one-off incident, or is there a pattern to it? Because when there's a pattern to it, normally, sometimes one-off behaviors, we think that, okay, maybe the other person's going through some emotional things that are happening, that are upsetting. But if it is something that is not one off, that is, there's a consistent pattern to it every time, every meeting, then you need to take note of those, and we'll go over all of those steps that you need to do. What companies can do, and if your company does not support that, you can talk to HR. But if your company support it, but they don't have anything like that, what you can do is at least have your own respect in the workplace rules that you can maybe follow. You can just put up in the meeting room. And the other thing that you can do is, if you are taking notes during company meetings, other things, and those notes are kind of a record of what's happening, then that's also a signal to the other people to kind of stick to the topic and just kind of talk about what the task is, and not talk about other negative things that are there. So when something like this happens to you, that you are in a situation where you have to deal with inappropriate behavior in the form of bullying, abuse, harassment, or discrimination, you can respond verbally and non-verbally. So there are some do's and don'ts that I'm going to just share with you. So in terms of verbal communication, the first thing that you need to do is you need to remain calm and in control of your emotions. Because if somebody, maybe you have a client and they are, they just kind of yell at you or something like that. So the first thing is that we can mirror their behavior. The other one is that if we remain calm, they can mirror your behavior as well. So the calming effect that you remain calm will tell them to be calm as well. Then focus your attention on the other person. So if you're doing something, there's anything that you're working with in the moment, give them your 100% attention so that they know that you are listening and that you are focused, and then you genuinely care that they have a problem or an issue or something like that. um, Encourage the other person to talk, stay open-minded, and be objective. So sometimes people will be like, oh, you know what, never mind, you'll never understand, or something like that. Then what are some of the things that you can do when somebody's opening up to you, and what you can do? um, Acknowledge the other person's feelings by saying, I can see that you're upset, but don't say things like, I understand completely, or I know, or I've been in that situation. Those are dismissive words. Don't use those words, because that means that you're taking the attention away from the other person by saying that, you know what, I totally get you. I was in that situation. Sometimes, a lot of times we say that, but remember, the focus has is right now is that other person is upset and you are dealing with them. And what is the focus? You have to hear them out first. Okay. Be aware of the words that you choose to speak with them, and be very careful of what you're saying. Speak slowly, quietly, and confidently. So tell the other person what it is that they will that you're saying, or what the rules are. A lot of times, this has happened with me. A lot of times, I have faced aggression and harassment, even at the hands of students, at the hands of some other people. And then, what are some of the things that you're doing? So if you're in a confrontation phase where somebody's maybe fighting over something, with me it happens about evaluations, marks, and other things, then I think the first thing is that I let them know that, you know what, I'm listening to you, I'm here for you, and then logically reason it out with them as to why they didn't get the mark that they needed, or what happened in that situation. So kind of, just focus on that. Do not, again, if something like this happens, then don't give them all of those suggestions or advice or other things, that knowing that everything. So a lot of times, especially if it's an outburst, let the other person just kind of speak up, but you have to also give them that assertive look, and not look, but just kind of that behavior that they need to be respectful. Okay. Don't glare or stare at the other person. Again, as I said, if they're angry, if you're going to be angry as well, don't do that. um, don't let the other person's anger become your anger. This is something very important. And never tell the person to relax or calm down. So if you tell them, okay, you know what, you need to relax now, you need to calm down now, sometimes that will agitate them as well, especially if it's a situation that you have over there. So the other thing, if you are in that situation where there's a bully or there's a person who's harassing, body language plays a very important role as well. So you need to have a neutral, attentive expression, especially if it's a client or somebody that you're dealing with, and they have the situation, and they're kind of expressing their frustration at something that happened. Okay. Positions yourself so that the exit is not blocked. So you have to look at your safety as well. So if you're in a situation like this where there's aggression or something, you have to be very careful how to position yourself. We did a training once, it was called verbal jiu-jitsu, and then or verbal judo, and then they told us how to stand, what to do, because the way you stand can also kind of signal to the other person if you have an aggressive behavior, or if you're too meek. In both situations, we don't want that kind of. So how you stand when you are, or sit when you are with another person, that's something important. If you are in a situation, I think maintaining the level or the eye contact, that also is very important. So if somebody comes to you and you're sitting down and they're standing down, kind of towering over you, maybe just get up, and then so that they know that this person's at an equal footing. Similarly, if you are somebody who has shown aggression, or if you have to talk about something to the other person, sit down at their eye level so that they know that you mean that you know that this is what you have to do, or maintain that level that you have with them. Don't cross your arms, point your fingers at other people, and don't make sudden movements, especially if it's a situation where this other person's really angry. Making sudden movements, those kinds of things are going to be a little bit difficult. Avoid physical confrontation at all costs, when possible. So walk away. That's the first thing, and then get assistance. So you don't have to. You don't have to. Getting assistance is very, very, very important. Sometimes what happens is that we come across such abuse or harassment at the hands of clients, at the hands of other people, but notifying your manager, notifying in writing to the other person what has happened is very, very, very important, so that it can be documented, and it can be kept, so that this is what happened. So those are some very important things. I once had a colleague had a confrontation with somebody, did not report it, but then psychologically it impacted that colleague so much. I kept, trying to tell them, please do, you need to report this. But they said, no, I'm new. I'm not going to report it, because if I report it, probably the company is going to see me as somebody who's a troublemaker. That is not the case. And that was not the case at that particular company. So what do you do? What is the behavior that you can do if you're a bystander, or if there is a bully, or if you want that communication to stop? So in a workplace, well, you could start by using I statements. When we say I statements, so especially if you're talking to a bully, you have to be very careful. First of all, you have to have that safe space. So there was an incident where one person felt, and because we do workplace kind of norms as well. So this one person shared that her manager is always bullying her, always kind of getting on her case, telling her that you haven't finished this, you haven't done that, you're slow. And she said, how can I deal with that? Every time I try to talk to him, when he's telling me all of these things, he gets agitated, he gets even angrier than he was before. So how do I do that? So the first thing is that know the time and the place where you need to talk. So if so then what she did was, the steps that she took was, and she was coached into doing that, that set up a time and an appointment. Have somebody, if you feel that you cannot talk to your aggressor, who may be your manager, supervisor, alone, maybe request somebody from, if you have a union, or if you don't have a union, then somebody from HR to come and sit in that meeting. That's very important. The other thing is that use I statements, not like so you have to use I statements. When I say that, it means that I felt this way, or I felt that you did not do this. So I felt, so start by that. Okay. I felt upset when you said that I hadn't finished the work, whereas I had. When you start by saying that you always do this, that instantly puts the other person in a defensive mode. So we don't want the other person to suddenly have their defense mechanism on, especially when you're trying to tell them that this is what's happening. So start with that. So tell them how you feel. So I feel this, and this is how I feel. When this bullying behavior starts, or if this harassment starts, some other steps that you need to do is that, the first step is speak up, and that's what we're saying, talk to the person. You need to document all the incidents that are happening. This is very powerful, because why do we need to document? We need to document for one or two reasons. The first one is so that when you are outside of that time or that incident, you will notice that, I'm just going to check my message. There's a message from Pfizer. Yeah, I'll just answer these questions in a bit. Oops, sorry. So it's very important to speak up first of all. And if you don't speak up nowadays, you must have seen that if you don't speak up, if you're silent in a place, in a situation where something's happening, then you're party to the bully. You're partying or siding with the other person as well. So the first thing is that you have to speak up. Okay. And the other thing to remember is that it's the impact that counts and not the intent. So whatever the intent, your intent might be, or the other person's intent might be, it's the impact that counts. Especially when you're dealing with any of these things. Does the other person feel abused or harassed or bullied or discriminated, whereas it wasn't your intent? So nobody's asking like, oh, this is, I didn't mean to. No, you need to see what are going to be the implications of your decision that you have. So speak up about the incident, document. Okay, so that's something very important that you need to do. That is that you need to document whatever has been happening. Why do we say that you need to document? Well, that is because in case you need to support your whatever that you have said, the claim that you have made that this person did this. So if there's a pattern, documentation can also help you see that pattern. Were there certain times, were there certain events, certain projects that you were working on and this happened, right? And when you're documenting, you can also see that that there's a pattern. And then if you are not taking notes, like whenever I have a meeting with somebody who's not, and I've been in these situations where people do not agree with the marks that you've given or the project that you've worked on. So I work as a teacher trainer as well. I work with different people as professionals as well. So there'd be sometimes, there may be a case in point where something like this happens. So I when I'm in that talk, first thing that I will probably do is I request somebody else to come in and sit. So not just anybody, so that that person is comfortable with them as well. So it could be my manager, it could be my supervisor. They don't have to do anything. The manager and the supervisor does not have to initiate to be the negotiator or anything like that. They're just sitting there, so that I have a witness. I have somebody that this is what I said, so that I'm not going to be misinterpreted. So I would do it as a almost not as a last resort, but as a way of tackling this as well. So when you are documenting things, time, event, place, who were some of the witnesses, who saw this, when did this happen? So exact things, because when you are going to go to somebody, you need to have all of these details, because when you make a claim about something and there's an investigation, they will need concrete details, right? So they will need concrete details, any expressions, words, other things that you remember that the person might have said. So just document that, take notes, as you can. Okay, names of everyone who was involved, names of witnesses, and what was the outcome of that event. So if something like this happened, if there was an aggressive, or abusive behavior, what was the outcome of that? How did it impact you? How did it impact other people? What happened afterwards? So document that, save copies if you have anything, like if it's a note that's written, if it's an email that was sent to you, you need to save copies of all of these things. And then so that again, they can benefit your case. Report. So if you feel that you've spoken up, you've talked to the person, and the behavior hasn't stopped, then there's the point where you need to report that behavior to your immediate manager. In a lot of companies that I've worked with, first and foremost, they want us to kind of try and find a departmental solution to situations, right? And then if there's no departmental situation, then you need to go on to HR, and then you need to talk to them about, sometimes it could be, if it's your immediate supervisor, then what do you do, right? And then you can go to HR and talk about, with all of these documents, with all of these copies that you have of incidents, other things. And then the next, a very important thing is to keep calm. So don't retaliate, keep calm, stay calm at all times. Sometimes what happens is that, so there are two ways to it. So maybe the bully or the aggressor, well, if it's a bully, they're doing it intentionally. So they will just immediately, just back off, or immediately just say, well, I don't know, I didn't do anything, or it's just an off comment, right? But how that, again, remember we talked about intent and impact, but how that impacted you can scar you. How many of us remember, we don't even remember the names of our teachers, or we don't even remember which subject they taught us, or people that we worked with. Sometimes we don't even remember the names of the colleagues, but we remember the comment that they made. We remember what they said about us or about our work. We remember that particular point. And especially, if you look at your whole life, even with our family members, we forget the incident, we forget the situation, the place, everything. We just remember what they said. So the impact of that, it's because we felt the impact of that. So that's what you have to look at. And then, very important, to keep yourself safe. Never put yourself in a situation when you feel unsafe. So if you feel that if you're going to speak to the bully or tell them to stop, are you going to be in that unsafe situation? Okay. um, so if you think so, a lot of times this is what we have done. So this is what we do a lot of times. um, if you're talking to somebody, so maybe have, so I always have, if it's going to be a difficult meeting, what I do is that I always keep the door open a little bit, obviously choosing a time, and I let somebody know that I'm having this talk and this meeting with this person about this situation. So we're going to be talking about that. I choose a room, and obviously it depends if you have the logistics or not. I choose a room where I'm not just in that one room with one person locked. There's a window or there's something. I have my phone or something handy, and so in cases like this, you have to know the steps. How can you immediately get help if you're going to be in that particular situation? Okay. And if you think that the situation is unsafe, ask the coworker to walk with you. Maybe a lot of companies have a safety walk feature where they will go with employees, or at my workplace it's 1 kilometer, 1 block. So the safety personnel will walk with us for about 1 block, so that we feel safe leaving the workplace if a situation occurs. And report that behavior immediately, is because it's very important that you feel safe. Your safety is of primary interest to you. Here also, you can use when you're talking about um, tackling this disrespectful behavior, also think about what the tool that I gave in the earlier workshop was, the die tool. So this was describe, interpret, and evaluate. So think about it. Why did the person react this way? Was it, so when you're describing a situation and interpreting it, was it that this person perceived you as a threat? Well, this person's been, so if they're saying things like, oh, we've always done it this way, this is how we do things, we and or people telling you to comply, like, you know what, you have to do it this way, otherwise, well, then again, going back to that first thing, do the values and the mission and the vision of that company align with your values or not? So that's the first question that you need to ask yourself. Is it worthwhile that you are suffering so much psychologically that you need to be here? Yes, sometimes it is. We unless we get another job, we have to put food on the table, right? There is no other option. So when there is no other option, what are some of the things that you can do? So look at that. Do you think that a lot of times what happens is, especially if you're new to the company, or maybe if you're at that stage where maybe you may need to jump to the next level, is a lot of times your colleagues or your immediate bosses, other people, will feel threatened that this person may take my spot. That is that If that is that underlying fear, then how do you tackle that? Maybe you can just, it's not your fault. They need to have that growth mindset, or the company needs to have that growth mindset. I've also seen a lot of times companies openly, just kind of asking employees, what is it that so and so has done wrong, or to report each and everything. So sometimes, as a step one, try and work the problem out amongst yourselves, right? And then have come up with solutions yourself. But include your team member or your supervisor or your manager in that decision making procedure of, this is how we're going to go about it, especially in projects and other things, right? And then after that, if things escalate, then those are some of the things that you can do. um, Always remember, it's a lot of, it's about you, it's about your safety. But the perception, or you cannot conform yourself to somebody else's perception. Probably they need to have multiple lenses, so that they can look at you from a different perspective and honor you and respect you, and provide you with that personal dignity and the professional dignity that you so deserve because of who you are. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the last one. And then maybe before I go into this, because that will be the end, I'm just going to take some of these questions that people have. And then the question is how to deal with a manager that won't protect you in a bullying incident. So first of all, again, as I said, documentation is very important. Taking notes and saving copies of all of those things, that's very important. So when you talk about with a manager, you can involve them, but I would say get help from HR. Go to HR, think about it. Go to your manager with your code of conduct policy that's over there. A lot of places do have the code of conduct policy or the procedures that are there. So are you following those? What is the company stand on all of these things? And if the company does not have one, look at the labor laws, the codes. Each country, each province, each place has a different one. So you can look at some of those things as well. Again, as I said, when you go to, so how are you going to your manager and telling them that such and such thing happened? Was it a one-off incident or what happened? I have always been very lucky that I've had very supportive managers. I mean, I will be honest here that one time there was this threat that was given to me, and my manager took it so seriously that that person was not allowed to be on campus or to be on premises for a year. And so those are some of the policies. So what are the policies of your company around that, right? We did not have to use any HR person, anything. We just had, the policies were so strong and the manager was so supportive that they were able to initiate that. Even though I told them that no, it's okay, I don't want them being barred from premises, but they said no, this is not acceptable. And that sets a tone at the company as well. That sets a tone at the place that you're working as well. How to make sure that the organization's meetings don't convert into an echo chamber. So I guess what you mean over here is that when everybody's just echoing everything. So as we said, observe everybody's behaviors, observe those things, but then choose or look at the positivities and then speak up. That's very important. If you have the tendency to just stay quiet when maybe so and so at the company is being criticized. Now remember, if people are criticizing another person, chances are they're criticizing you behind their back as well. Okay, it might be very powerful when I say that, but it is the case. So if you see a person or a colleague who's talking negatively or criticizing almost everybody at the company, don't think that you're very different. You are being criticized by that colleague yourself. So you have to put a stop to it. I have done it many times. Initially I used to be very quiet because I've been kind of a global worker. I've worked in Pakistan, I've worked in Canada, I've worked in the US, and it takes time to kind of get to know the company, the culture, and how things are very different in Pakistan and Canada, but things are very different in Canada and in the US as well. So things are very different here as well, so it takes time. But the first thing is that how do you respond when you hear other people speak negatively about other people? So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is that, especially at company meetings, so when you have a meeting, there has to be an agenda. You should have a timekeeper, minute, note taker, and then try and follow that agenda. Let people know that whatever we are doing is being documented. And that is a big thing. When you tell somebody that, what, we're going to be documenting everything that you're saying, they will choose their words wisely. So that's something very important as well. And then if the third thing, and I've seen that this is very powerful. Sometimes, some of us need that confidence. We can't just tell our manager to stop, criticizing or whatever. So it's a good idea as a company policy, and have your manager on board with this, is that to display some respect in the workplace rules, that stop whatever. And you can come up with those. There's so many organizations that help companies do that, come up with those rules that align with your company policy. We just can't make up rules without even knowing what those rules are, what are the policies of the company, or even the laws of the place that you're working, right? A lot of you probably are working with companies that are in different locations. Have you ever tried to find out what are your rights, what are your responsibilities, and what are the laws and the codes that particular company is being run by, in which region, in which company. So a lot of your oil and gas companies are very diverse in the sense that they're very global, right? And so I was talking to one of the employees over there, and she told me that rules are different. So a lot of times, obviously labor laws are different in different countries, in different places. But then even within the company, the code of conduct is tweaked. The larger one stays the same, but it's to comply with the labor laws that are there in that particular country. In Canada, it's Canada is a worker friendly country, lots and lots of rights for workers, and so a lot of things that I see in Canada are missing in other places as well. In the US, it depends a lot less. There are federal policies, but then there are state policies as well that uh, cover or help us a lot. So those are some of the things, but I think the key things is to don't be part of that negativity. First of all, then next is that note down all of the things. So at the company meeting, and third is have that on display. I hope I understood the question correctly. Number three is how to deal with the fear of intimidation and backlash. That's a valid fear. So first of all, know the consequences of the actions that you're going to take. So that's something very important. Again, I've given you these good steps and everything, but then what if your company is not supportive of that? What do you do? What do you do? So remember, the point that I brought in last is actually the most essential and very important, and that is your safety. Your safety, your inner safety, your emotional health, your physical health. All of those things are very, very, very important. Can you deal with that, or if you can't deal with that? So when you talk about intimidation and backlash, then what? So there are multiple layers to this, and there are multiple steps to this. Is it a backlash from your team, your immediate supervisor, or is it the company itself? So if it's something that has to do with your team, yes, then you can go on to the next step or the next step. But if it's a company thing, then then that's going to be difficult. Then probably, I mean, you need to either be the voice at your company to come up with such policies. And there are different ways of doing it. You could, like, initiate or ask them at least to do a climate survey. So climate in the workplace survey is a good indicator. If your company already does not do it, it's a Herculean task. I know I've worked at organizations that do it every, like, 2 years or 3 years or 2 years, something like that, and then they come up with policies, procedures, because those things have implications on what you need to do. Then the other thing that you can do is, especially with intimidation, is the steps that I chalked out for you. First of all, speak up. Yes, you can speak up, but then if you're afraid, safety is a concern. Have that documentation, have those notes that you have with you, and seek support. So what kind of supports are available? So that's the first thing that a lot of us should do when we join a new company or go, that we need to look at, first of all, the vision, value, missions, code of conduct, and then what are the supports that are there, that are present at the company, that if I need and when I need, I will have that, and I know the procedure, I know what to do. So when you know the procedures, that's a lot of ground that you've already won over that. So this question number 4 is very interesting. It says, I have a manager who's very mean to all women, but very nice to men. I initially thought it was just me and the other colleague, but now we have more women in the team and he's like that with all of them. How to deal with someone like that? So that's a valid concern, a valid question. And if we do not have people like these, we have people who like to mansplain as well, right? That they think that just because. So again, there's a lot that's at play over here. So the first thing I would, as if I were to, create a profile of this manager, I would think that they are somebody who have these biases, which probably are not even unconscious or not hidden. The way they're talking to women, the way they are dealing with women, just because they think that. So the other thing that I think about this particular manager is that if your company is hiring a lot of women, and then you have this one manager who is mean to women, then probably the manager is not in alignment with the company values as well. So there I see that there is this opportunity for you and for that manager to grow as well, right? We don't want to just kind of label people and then have them fired or whatever. That's not the end result. That's not a growth mindset. So we need to approach everything with a growth mindset. We need to have that outlook in life where you're if they have this particular kind of a mindset, then yes, problem solved for you that they have been fired by the company, but problem for some other women at another company. So what is that growth mindset that you could, like, go to HR, go to another supervisor, manager, look at other things, and then talk about or think about discrimination against women, equality, and look at what the role is. So from what I see over here is that this your company supports women, right? So if your company is supporting women, that gives me a cue and hope that the culture that is set by this particular manager needs to change. And then also when I talked about noting things down, how are your male colleagues? Are they mirroring his behavior, or are they doing something? So if they're not doing something, so that means that they're not standing up, they're not speaking up, they're not following the steps that we talked about. So we need to look at all of these things as well. So maybe what you could do is you could just mobilize the support of your colleagues as well. There are a number of ways that you could go about it. I'm not very familiar with your company, but some of the things that I would do would be, first of all, ask them, like, in a meeting, if you have a performance appraisal or something like that, if it's you or your work that they're concerned about, and then you can go on and talk about, use the I approach, that this is how I think that this that you've made me feel. And then let's see what they have to do. Sometimes people sometimes now, when I say sometimes, this particular person probably is aware that they discriminate. They're aware that they do that, and that probably has stemmed from some hidden, like, past experiences that they've had, where maybe they were dominated by a woman manager or something like that. So those are some of the things that are there. So if you can know, but this is your manager, how would do you don't the job is not to know what the problem is, the job is to actually fix the problem. So talking to them could be one thing. The other thing, and let's see if that changes the behavior or not. So you've obviously noted a pattern, you've talked to your colleagues about it. So if there is a pattern, start noting down exact details, words, sentences, timings, how you felt, how other people felt. Okay, so did you feel like, what is it, all the time just belittling you? Are there any sexist jokes that they crack? Are there any sexist terminology that they're using? Are there any words or phrases that they're using, generalized statements that, oh yeah, you women, and they say things negative about women? So note down all of those things. When you have this evidence to support, then I would say just go to HR and then talk to them. Or if there is another manager or a supervisor, just talk to them. A lot of companies have this. There was this one point around getting that backlash. A lot of companies have this anonymous kind of box as well sometimes, or the HR will give them the confidence that you can send us the email, we won't leak your name. So those are some of the things that you can talk about. Okay. Some managers set you up for failure and then bully you. What to do about it? So again, it's this is a clear cut case of somebody who feels threatened. They probably are not in alignment with your company policy. It's a personal agenda that they have and that they're following, not the company vision or mission. Because if you've been hired, if your company thinks that there's a need and you are there clearly, then this is a personal thing, and that personal thing needs to be called out. It needs to be identified. And so what you can do is, again, some of the steps that I've talked about. Sometimes what happens is that remember I was talking about mirroring the behavior. Sometimes what happens is that when we go to a new place, we think it's cool if we mirror somebody's behavior. Now, this is an authentic example that I'm going to share with you. One of my friends shared with me that they used a phrase in a Western company, in a Western country. They used the phrase "somebody give me a gun." It's a phrase. It's an idiomatic expression that you use, that when you're done explaining and the people still don't understand it, or you're frustrated, like, okay, somebody give me a gun, right? Now, this person had heard of the expression. They had seen their top vice presidents use it at company meetings all the time. What this person did was that she was in a team lead position, and then they used this expression with their team because the team could not understand what they needed to do, and said, "Oh, come on, somebody give me." And then this person, this friend of mine, was reported, and then this friend was reported, and then had to go to HR, go over the entire policy, read through it, look at everything, and then still, after doing everything, having that meeting with HR, the friend was still upset as to why is it that it's okay for the vice president to use it and not okay for me to use it, and this person, just because I'm a person of color, my team member reported, this team member is jealous of me. Fine. And what I just had one thing to say to my friend, and I said, just because your vice president was using that phrase at a company meeting with employees doesn't mean that you can use it. So they were wrong in the first place, and then you mirrored that mistake, and then you made that mistake again, and then this person has called you out, whatever the reasons you're saying that they're jealous or whatever. But you need to acknowledge, first of all, that by using this phrase, you did not do the right thing. This was unprofessional to use a phrase like this, where in a country, in a workplace, in a place where people are very, very kind of, guns and gun control and other things, I just the person felt threatened. Remember, when we talked about it's the impact and not the intent that matters. So when you go by that, it's the impact and not the intent. And when you try, if you're a male, if you're a woman, whatever, a lot of women will also maybe sometimes come across as aggressors, as bullies as well, when they're not trying to be, but that happens as well. So think about all of these things that you have, and then just towards the end, I just want to just kind of look at some of the things that can help us maintain and nurture a respectful workplace. So have an honest, compassion approach towards your workplace and work environment, and so that a workplace that is respectful, everybody works towards the collective success. So in these questions, I see that there are hidden agendas of people, and people are working towards their own goals and not towards the goals of the company. So these managers clearly do not support the company policy, or if they think that they support the company policy, needs to be clearly kind of distributed and shared with everybody else. Modeling respectful behavior is something very important. So all of these examples that we see over here are of managers and supervisors. In the questions, we see that these are managers and supervisors who are not modeling respectful behavior. And then chances are that a lot of these men that all of you, the lovely women who are working here, they probably will go on and take on that behavior and use that. So if you flip it, and if you are modeling that respectful behavior at team meetings with each other, and then once you go to that supervisory position, then that's where you need to do that as well. So this respectful behavior needs to be shown and should be seen in your interactions with colleagues, male and female. It needs to be seen with your interactions with your bosses, with your managers, with your supervisors, with your clients. After you put down the phone, after you come out of the room of your manager, your supervisor, what do you say to your team members? So when we talk about respect and respectful behavior, yes, managers, supervisors, as I said at the beginning, they have a bigger role to play. But how do you respond when you come out of a meeting? How do you respond when you don't get that appreciation that you so deserve, but you did not get, right? Do you curse them? Do you spread rumors about them? Do you gossip? Um, Okay, so think about it. These are tough questions that we need to ask ourselves too, because unconsciously then we are doing the same thing, that we are just kind of not being respectful toward the other person. if there's a client that you're working with. And now, sadly, I have seen this in my field as well, where we think that we are interculturally aware, we are interculturally competent, we are so out there just because we deal with people from so many different cultures. I've taught students from over 100 countries, students in 6 continents, right? I always try not to have my biases and my assumptions take the best of me or the better of me, and then I just kind of, keep everything at bay. But I have seen a lot of people make some off comments. Oh, yeah, so and so person is going to be good at this because they're from this particular country, or so and so person is going to be good because they're a doctor, or so and so person, oh yeah, they don't even have a written script in their language. How do you expect them to learn? So there are so many different things. Or just because they're from this particular culture, I don't want to name these cultures because then I don't want to be disrespectful to all of them. But people will give examples like, oh yeah, just because they're from, oh yeah, I have 50% of my class is from this country, that is why we can't do this. So all of these implicit assumptions that we make, they color what we do. So use respectful language, very important, in your interactions with colleagues, with friends, with not colleagues, and with your clients as well, and with your manager as well. And that is, use inclusive language as well, use respectful language. Are you making off jokes about other people? What are you doing? Are you The other thing is that a lot of times we will use particular language just to fit in. So are you doing that? So I don't know how many members of the audience are, the genders of the audiences, but there are particular males will tend to use certain things and words that they feel that are okay, right? But remember, this is a professional setting, and you have to be very careful of the words that you use. Similarly, if you're a woman, are you into a lot of like backbiting, other things? So again, these are assumptions that are coming up, right? Not necessarily all women do that or all men do that. So these are again assumptions that I'm just saying. But whoever you are, just try and be very maintain that respectful language use in your communication. Keep communication open and free from bias as well. So if you're saying words like, oh, all men are like this, or you're using these sweeping statements, then probably your communication is not free from bias, because no, not all men are like this, and no, all women are not like this, right? There are cases that you are there. And then when we say keep communication open, this means that you actively listen to the other person. So maybe there's a team member who comes to you, or maybe there's a manager who has a situation or a problem, and they tell you that this is wrong. You need to use reasoning, and you need to again use describe, interpret, evaluate. Describe the incident, interpret how you felt, how do you think the other person felt, and then evaluate and say, like in the example that I gave you of my friend working at that company, my friend, even after coming back and after the interpretation and the evaluation, still felt that it was, she did nothing wrong. But then when you use that tool to evaluate how did it make the other person feel, at that question is when she started thinking, and she said, well, I think they probably felt threatened because maybe they had some biases because I'm from this other country, not from Pakistan, and then my country people think that we are this and this and this. So you have to understand that what is it? It's a two-way street. Respect is a two-way street. Communication is a two-way street. So both of these things go hand in hand. Challenge your implicit bias. So don't just think that, oh, the manager did this, or they were disrespectful to so and so, or because this is an old timer and a person who's been here at the company for a very long time, that they are not going to help me or lead, make me be successful. So be careful of that. Then recognize your own areas of growth. So by doing all of these things, if you are a respectful workplace employee, you are going to recognize your own area of growth. Are there some things at your workstation or in your communication, whether verbal or written, that you're doing things, phrases you're using that can be perceived as not very sophisticated phrases, right? Or you're using language that discriminates. So think about it and recognize those areas of growth. Okay. So I hope all of these tips and situations have come in handy. There's a last question.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to tell you to answer the last question.
Yeah. So some managers set you up for failure and then bully you. What to do about that? So first of all is when you talk about setting yourself up for failure, um, what do you mean by that they're not giving you the technology? So it depends again, if you what kind of mindset that you have while going in. So yesterday I gave the example, one example. I'm going to quote that example over here too. If when we I was learning about debating and other things, so the role of opposition and proposition. So the proposition is some play that sets the pitch, and the field is, imagine you're playing cricket. So the proposition will go in, set the pitch, make sure, set their own rules, the boundaries, everything, and then start playing their game. A good opposition is one that goes in, plays by the rules of the proposition, and beats them at their own game. So if your manager has set you up for failure, what does that look like? Are there some rules that you're unable to follow? Is it that they have set you up for failure, or is it that there is just a different procedure at this particular company that you're not used to? So first of all, think about that. Then think about, is it physical, like, situations, or are they blocking your avenues? What is it? So first of all, you need to describe and you need to interpret what all that behavior is and how they're doing that, and could there be a different interpretation of that? Could it be that they aren't setting you up for failure, but they're just following rules? The problem is not the manager, maybe the rules of the company. So think about all of those things, okay? And then if you, after looking at everything logically, interpreting, getting those different views, looking at things from a different lens, so explore that. And then after you do that, then what you need to do is that you need to speak up. Then you need to speak up and you need to say that, use the I approach. So use the I approach, and then you can say that, well, I feel that I do not have the equipment or the supports that I need to teach successfully. However, this is what I am doing, but I would like you or the company to support me in this particular manner. The other thing that you could do is you could say that I feel that at company meetings, you openly criticize me, right? So can you maybe give me a chance to work on my areas of growth beforehand? And if it does not happen, then we can talk about it. So there are some ways that you can. I've noticed that when you tell people that this is how you feel, and not just crying or saying you, or just being or accusing them of something. You're not trying to accuse them of something, because when you start accusing, they're just going to be very defensive. So think about how they're making you feel. And a lot of times, if the person has just even a tiny bit of genuineness, they will try and reflect and change their behavior. If it does not change, then what you need to do is that then you need intervention. You need to go to HR. You need to seek help from whoever so is uh, the supervisor of that particular manager. So you need to do something like that. But again, you remember that you have to follow these steps that will help you. Because remember one thing, that the aim, so what is your aim and what is their aim? So if the aim of everybody is at the company is to be afraid of the other person, that the other person is going to tell on me, or I have to be, so you don't want to create this environment of fear. You don't want to do that. You want a growth mindset. You want the company to succeed. And if you want the company to succeed, if you want your project to succeed, then obviously, in all these questions that I've seen, there is growth for improvement. There are areas that where people can improve. So if you need to do that, so you need to make sure that, are you penalizing somebody or are you helping them grow? So what is your mindset as well when you go in with a complaint? So think about that as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadia. I guess you're done with all the questions. I also saw a few comments agreeing with what you were saying. and some more questions, but they all were kind of around these same ideas. Um, so I guess that's about it. Thank you so much, and if you have anything else to share, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to again, reiterate and say that maintaining and nurturing respectful workplace is very important. And it's not just the job of the company itself. Yes, the primary responsibility lies with the company, that they have what kind of a workplace culture do they have? Do they have this onboarding training or not? But also as employees, when we go in, what are some of the things that we are doing? So it's very important to be mindful of what you're following. Are you following what the proper behavior and what the respectful behavior needs to be, or are you just following the trend that's happening over there just because it's cool and everybody else is doing it, but it's disrespectful? What is it that you're doing? So just be careful of how you um, act, and how you are at the company, or how you work at that company. So that's something very important. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, you can certainly just send them, just put them down here, or you can send them to me later on. It's fine.
I'll definitely do that. Thank you so much, Nadia, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Faiza.